Sasha Riley has posted their adoption papers, and from it, I have been able to find some of the most damning evidence of a trafficking ring.
Sasha Riley. As a survivor myself, I want to listen to Sasha's story, but I can't. Even the little bits I've heard have sent me into a spiral. Don't worry, boys are hard to find. It wasn't just little girls. And this is also the second time I've heard one of the names listed tied to taking people out. And no, it's not J.E. And no, it's not, hey there, Mr. Tangerine Man. No, it's somebody else that's listed. And this is the second time I've heard their name, and I am being sent into a place. And again, these are all allegations, they're unverified. I'm going to link the Substack. If you feel like you are able to listen to Sasha's story, please do so. But know that it is incredibly graphic, it is incredibly disturbing, but it's also incredibly important that Sasha's story be heard, that Sasha be recognized for their bravery, not just for their service to this country, but for coming out at a time like this, knowing full well, they're putting their life at risk by doing so. They're putting their career at risk by doing so. But as a survivor, I liken it to having your humanity stripped from you, the experience of that. And I can't even imagine having to relive that. And the bravery that Sasha has shown is tremendous, but having to hear it repeated constantly on social media, I hope they're taking care of themselves and they are safe. And if you are a survivor, I hope you are taking care of yourself and you are safe. But I want to listen. I do. I just can't.
Hello everyone, welcome to Prime Pulse. Without wasting much time, let's get right into the video. The release and continuous discussion around the Epstein file has once again reopened painful conversations about power, abuse, and accountability. Over the years, the name Jeffrey Epstein has become linked to one of the most disturbing scandals involving wealth, influence, and alleged exploitation. Every time new documents, interviews, or testimonies surface, the public is left asking the same difficult questions. What is true? What is exaggerated? And why has justice been so slow or unclear for so many people? Recently, attention has turned towards claims involving Sasha Riley, and an interview that has circulated widely online. The interview has sparked debate, sympathy, disbelief, and confusion all at once. Many people are unsure how to interpret what was said, and others are struggling to understand how such serious claims can exist in the public space without clear legal outcomes. This discussion is not about proving guilt or innocence, but about explaining why situations like this feel unresolved and deeply troubling. One of the first things that stands out when people hear interviews connected to cases like Epstein's is how emotionally heavy they are. Listening to someone describe trauma, even that indirectly, can be upsetting. For so many viewers, the instinct is to feel empathy immediately. No one wants to believe that another human being suffering such, especially at the hands of powerful individuals who appeared untouchable for years. If any part of this story is true, then it represents a heartbreaking failure of systems that were meant to protect vulnerable people. At the same time, there is also public hesitation. Some people ask whether all claims connected to the Epstein case are accurate or whether some stories may be misunderstood, misinterpreted, or amplified by social media without enough verification. This hesitation does not always come from curiosity or disbelief towards victims, but from the reality that accusations, especially high profile ones, carry serious consequences in a legal sense, evidence, due process, and the formal investigation matter greatly.
Our world is so incredibly heavy. I don't know if you guys are on the side of TikTok where Sasha Riley, the interview that Sasha Riley did with a reporter, but man, the things that he describes that he went through allegedly, um, and I 100% believe him, but we gotta say allegedly. Um, so while doing some research on who Sasha Riley is, I learned, as well as many others learned, that The father was a pilot, allegedly, for Jeffrey Epstein, which led to Epstein allegedly asking the father if he could pay $5,000 to interact with Sasha. The father did this willingly, allegedly, and the details are just absolutely horrific. It is a very hard listen. Trigger warning for everything. Literally everything. Man, I don't know. I encourage everybody to please listen to it if you can stomach it, because I think it's important for us to know, because I don't think that we're ever going to get those Epstein files in the magnitude that we should. However, Sasha's descriptions of what they went through, allegedly, I think it's putting a lot of pieces to the puzzles together.
I just listened to several hours of an interview with Epstein survivor Sasha Riley, and I'm putting the name of the investigative journalist and the name of her article that is on Substack, where she links the audio recordings, which you can go and listen to for free. But before you do, I need to give you the strongest trigger warning I can possibly give. Because I've done 30 years in criminal law, and 8 of those years I was a child abuse prosecutor exclusively doing child abuse cases. I have seen and heard the unimaginable, and somehow this was worse. So, fair warning, very many of you should not listen to those recordings. But Sasha, they are allegations, of course. TikTok, they are allegations. But he names names and he gives details, and very many of the details that he gives have been corroborated. He, in my opinion, as someone who has cross-examined witnesses for 30 years, is a very credible reporter. But you can make your own decision. He names very powerful people, including you know who, whom he describes as the worst of the worst. The dam is about to break, people. The victims will receive their justice.
Message for anyone who is doubting the legitimacy of Sasha Riley's testimony simply because he is entirely unemotional throughout pretty much the entire thing. People are going to be emotionally detached because this is traumatic. It is actually, and I'm a therapist, hello, very common for people when they are recounting something incredibly traumatic. Usually the more traumatic it is, the more neutral that person is going to be in their recount of it, because they are dissociated, they are detached emotionally from that experience. Because let me ask you this, if I'm gonna say, hey, tell me the worst thing that's ever happened to you, are you gonna want to relive that emotionally too? No, you're not. You're not. That was literally the worst thing that ever happened to you, dude. Like, what? No, we're not gonna do that.
So there may be a link between Sasha and the Epstein files. So this was posted to Reddit 3 days ago, and I've been spending my time going through it. Back in July, Sasha Riley said his name was William Sasha Riley. So Sasha states that he was
Trafficked by a family member. And children are named after family members all the time. So if we look through the Epstein files for the same name, there actually is a William Riley all throughout it. Sometimes he's referred to as Bill, but he was Epstein's preferred private investigator, going as far as going to see victims to try to convince them to not rat him out. This is Virginia Guthrie's testimony stating that Bill Riley came to her house and told her that if she stayed quiet, she would be looked after. And in this document, it shows that Roy Black is a client of Bill Riley. Roy Black was Jeffrey Epstein's lawyer when he got that sweetheart deal in 2008. And this is Jeffrey Epstein's pilot pleading the fifth that she doesn't know who Bill Riley is. And this is an email between David Schoen, an attorney, and Epstein. And David is saying that he needs a PI. He looked at this guy. What does he think? And Epstein says, don't. William Riley. And then somewhere, there's a deposition of Bill Riley. And then in 2017, he was called to be a witness in the Epstein case. So while these documents are all from the Department of Justice, any link between Sasha Riley and William Riley is just coincidence. Because without the release of the rest of the Epstein files, there's no way for us to ever really know.
If you've been listening to the testimonials by Sasha Riley, a whistleblower of Epstein's Island, you are starting to see more of the full scope of what was happening versus the lies that they've been giving us. See, the Epstein's file was never simply about pedophilia. It was actually much darker and deeper than that. Now you understand why Megyn Kelly's statement was more of a dog whistle than controversial. If you don't remember, Megyn Kelly said, oh, Epstein wasn't really hooking up with 13 years or younger. And show me the evidence, because if there were little children, where are they? Now, in regards to Sasha Riley's testimony, you understand exactly why she said that, or why the president himself would say something like, I could shoot someone and no one would care. These people have been slipping this messaging in plain sight, but because you do not understand their society, you see, everyone keeps asking, where are the files? Where are the files? But what about where are the children? We never actually focused on the children and the victims. We were just focusing on the drama. Because if you were focusing on the children, you would have found out a long time ago what was actually happening to them and why we don't have more witnesses.
So last night I got through most of the Sasha Riley tapes, the male Jeffrey E. victim who was a child at the time. And even though I suspected as much, it is still much, much, much worse than we ever anticipated. I'm not going to give specific details, but let's just say that Jeffrey E., he was a mid-level employee in this whole operation. He was like the general manager of a franchise. He was not the CEO. Sasha was very clear that this guy was the CEO. You know, being in the mental health field for over 20 years and specializing in trauma, I have heard some of the most horrific stories that I think I could have ever imagined. And I've had to develop the skill to learn how to hear these stories and not have a reaction so I could be there for my patients. Not many stories affect me anymore, but this one did. I broke down a couple times listening to it, and frankly, that surprised me. It makes the allegation of the baby on the boat, you guys know what I'm talking about, not just seem incredibly believable, but mild compared to what they had to endure. Let's just say that some people get off on watching the physical or emotional suffering of others, and suffering is an understatement. I believe that these are credible reports for several reasons. One, I believe victims. Two, Sasha has provided their entire identity and also name quite a few people in this report. And if someone's telling the truth, they cannot get in trouble for defamation. Three, Sasha filed multiple police reports as a child, and they are in the process of collecting those reports. Sasha's reporting of the incidents is unfortunately very consistent with somebody who has had complex trauma. Some details are remembered very clearly, some things are a blur, but the thing that got me the most is that Sasha said, I remembered the faces of the people that scared me the most, the people who I even knew as a child would be the most likely to take. And guess who one of those people were? Now, these audio tapes were recorded even before the files were released, and many of the instances can be corroborated. But it now makes sense as to why Jeffrey E. in his email said that the Orange Man was the most evil person he's ever met. Sasha said they are willing to testify in front of anybody, so we need to make sure that everybody knows about this, because this will be the thing that brings the dictator down. If you are a survivor, this may not be good for you to listen to, but you know yourself the best. I just want to say how incredibly impressed I am at their bravery.
If Sasha Riley is lying, sue him. Sue him for defamation. The most powerful man in the world could just sue him for defamation. The only time anybody ever gets sued for defamation is when what they say is a lie. So Donnie Boy, sue him. Shouldn't be able to say those things, make up these stories about our dear leader. I mean, it's not as if every single news station is doing their absolute damnedest to make sure that they don't report on this because they're terrified of you. We all heard about it, though. Digital age serves its purpose. Come on, Donnie.
This leads to one of the biggest questions people are asking. If these claims are true, why haven't legal processes been clearly issued against everyone mentioned? The Epstein case itself showed that wealth and influence can delay justice. Epstein was able to avoid accountability for years, and when legal action finally gained momentum, it came far too late for many victims to feel closure. That history alone makes people suspicious that others connected to the case would also escape scrutiny. However, the absence of legal action does not automatically confirm guilt or innocence. There are many reasons why a case might not move forward in court. Evidence may be insufficient, witnesses may be unwilling or unable to testify, or claims may fall outside legal time limits depending on jurisdiction. In some cases, investigations may be ongoing but not public. Unfortunately, the legal system often moves much slower than public conversation, especially in sensitive cases involving alleged abuse. The interviews with Sasha Riley has added another emotional layer to the discussion. Interviews are powerful, but they are not out courtrooms. They present one person's experience, perspective, and memory. While these accounts deserve to be heard with care and compassion, they still require proper investigation before conclusions can be drawn. Social media, however, tends to blur these lines. Viewers may treat interviews as proof while others dismiss them entirely, creating a divide that helps no one. What makes this situation especially sad is the human cost at the center of it all. If any part of these claims reflects real experiences, then it means someone lived through fear, confusion, harm, and that should never happen to anyone. This, especially when tied to power influences, leaves long-lasting scars. Survivors often carry pain silently for years, sometimes decades, before feeling safe enough to speak. When these stories are questioned or politicized, that pain can deepen. On the other hand, false or exaggerated claims, if they exist, also cause damage. They can undermine trust in real survivors, distract from genuine cases, and complicate the pursuit of justice. This is why careful, responsible discussions matters. It is possible to show empathy without rushing to judgment and to ask questions without dismissing surface suffering. Another uncomfortable reality is that cases like this highlight how unequal the justice system can be. When ordinary people commit crimes, consequences often come quickly. But when powerful individuals are involved, the process can appear slow, secretive, or non existent. This creates public frustration and fits conspiracy theories. Even when there may be legal explanations behind the scenes, transparency become clearer, yet it is often lacking. Ultimately, the Epstein files and interviews connected to them remind us of something deeply unsettling. Systems designed to protect can fail, and voices can go unheard. So, for far too long, whether every claim is proven true or not, the emotional impact of these stories is real. Those forces around them should be given every attention needed. The society to confront uncomfortable questions about accountability, power, and how we treat those who speak up. If the allegations discussed are true, then it is profoundly tragic. No one should ever have to endure exploitation, fear, or silence, especially at a young age or under pressure from authority. If they are not true, then it is equally important for clarity, investigation, and truth to be established so that justice in its fullest sense can prevail. What remains clear is that these conversations should be handled with care. This is not entertainment or gossip. It is about real lives, real pain, real consequences. The goal should never be outrage alone, but understanding, accountability, and compassion. Until clear answers emerge, the sadness many people feel is understandable because at the heart of it all is a simple truth: no one deserves to suffer, and no story involving harm should ever be ignored. All right, guys. We all have heard this, and we'll be waiting. I'll be waiting to know what you all think in the comment section. So don't forget to like and subscribe, and do not forget to share your thoughts about this in the comment section. Thank you so much for watching. See you in the next one, and all rights remain to the original creators of the videos. Thank you so much, all. Bye.